Welcome to a late night version of the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I'm not going to keep this too long, but there are two big items that have taken effect today. One, Tulsi Gabbard is sworn in as Director of National Intelligence. Congrats on that. That is fantastic. There were questions about whether or not Gabbard was going to be able to be sworn in, whether she was going to get through the gauntlet of angry, spiteful bitches, Democrats, as Ted Rawl called them. She did, and not just got through it. She has now been sworn in. It is official. Tulsi Gabbard is the new Director of National Intelligence. Her views on Gaza and Israel aside, as I pointed out once before, Gabbard has been one of the only people to call a spade in regards to regime change wars. I applaud that, and I want that in Trump's ear. So there's that. F you to Sanders for not voting for Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard stepped down in order to back that same Bernie Sanders, put her career on the line to do so, essentially set it on fire for Bernie. And she did it, in her mind, because Sanders was a better alternative to whoever was running at that time, Hillary Clinton. So they took on the machine together, and that machine has consistently gone after Gabbard for doing so. Sanders couldn't muster the loyalty, couldn't muster the courage to reciprocate what Gabbard did for him. It should have been easy. He couldn't do it. So regardless of that, that just bugs me to no end, because you want all of these people to be your allies. You want all of these people to back you. When the situation reverses, where they need your support, you can't give it. You don't give it. Whether it's weakness, which is something that Sanders has shown over and over and over again, whether it's disloyalty or this inability to be authentic in regards to loyalty, I don't know what it is. I just know a vote was made. The vote was against Gabbard, the same person that voted for Bernie when it was not in her best interest to do so. So there's that. I'm not going to beat that into the ground. I spent like 30 minutes on it because it bugged the hell out of me earlier today. The other thing has to do with Putin and Trump meeting. Now, Trump outed this once before. And in outing this, there was a question of, okay, well, wait a minute. Have they been talking behind the scenes? Now, when it came to Russia, they were mum on the issue. We have no idea what Donald Trump was talking about. Maybe he was talking, maybe he wasn't. We don't know. We don't know. Meaning they were very cagey about whether these conversations were taking place. So it was unclear on whether they were taking place and Trump outed it, or they weren't taking place and Trump just lied. And fact is, it could be either one of those things. I don't know. Russia hasn't, up to this point, at least not in the reading that I've done, owned any of the prior phone calls. So this one is the official call. This is where both sides say, yes, a phone call took place. And not just took place, they talk about the phone call being lengthy and productive. Quote, lengthy and highly productive. Trump, on his Truth Social media, quote, we discussed Ukraine, the Middle East, energy, artificial intelligence, the power of the dollar, and various other subjects, the U.S. president wrote. Russia's backing this up. If you check Russian media, they are reporting effectively the same thing. So we are finally getting Trump making moves officially to end the war. Trump has also pointed out that they most likely will meet in Saudi Arabia. So there's that part. And he also says something else in the meeting that I'm going to show you in the Oval Office, where he didn't just talk about meeting in Saudi Arabia. He talked about Putin coming here and him going to Moscow to further talk, for further talks. Now, you must understand from the Russian perspective, and I think I can give this a pretty decent point of view on this, since I worked at a Russian radio station. It's not just about Ukraine. Ukraine is a symbol for NATO expansion. That symbol goes beyond the symbolic, because there are people on the ground. They are trying to expand into Ukraine. And so you've hit an inflection point. Something has to take place. What Russia wants is a large-scale framework of European security that goes beyond just the item for Ukraine. It's going into NATO expansion. It's going into this idea of what does the world look like now, where you have multipolar powers like China, India, Russia, etc. How do you divvy the world up? And are we at a situation, an inflection point, where that needs to be relitigated, redecided, considering facts on the ground and what those facts are: Russian power. That power being shown in Ukraine as NATO gets its ass handed to it. It's that. Now, the catch becomes, how do you end the war? And I would venture to say that from the Russian perspective, ending the war goes beyond just ending the war and goes into a larger framework of European security. So I'll say that. It's great that they're talking. They made the point of saying to immediately work on this idea of ending the war. And I'm going to show you the press conference that Donald Trump had a couple of hours ago on this very issue. This is him talking about ending the Ukraine war, finally.
I've never seen anything. I have pictures that are, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what you have to look at. Young, beautiful soldiers that are just being decimated. And it would be nice to end it immediately. But we had a very good talk with, people didn't really know what President Putin's thoughts were, but I think I can say with great confidence he wants to see it ended also. That's good. And we're going to work toward getting it ended and as fast as possible. It's a horrible situation going over. It's flat land, and the bullet goes off, and the only thing it can hit is a body, a human body, a young human body. And they're losing just tremendous numbers of mostly soldiers. Just the cities and towns have been largely demolished. It's a shame what's happened to that country. It would have never happened if I were president. That I can tell you would have never happened. It's to look at that. And October 7th would have never happened either, by the way, Middle East. But we'll get it. I think we'll get it. We'll get something done. We're going to be meeting actually tomorrow. They're meeting in Munich, as you know, and we're going to have some other meetings. And I'll be dealing with President Putin largely on the phone, and we ultimately expect to meet. In fact, we expect that he'll come here and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia. The first time we'll meet in Saudi Arabia, see if we can get something done. But we want to end that war. That war is a disaster. It's a really bloody, horrible war.
Did you Saudi Arabia, the first meeting will happen?
I think so. We think we're going to probably meet in Saudi Arabia, the first meeting. Hasn't been set, but not too distant future.
Did you also be part of that meeting?
We both understand, we know the Crown Prince, and I think it'd be a very good place to meet.
So it sounds like that would just be a meeting between you and Putin and perhaps the Crown Prince, but not President Zelenskyy?
Probably we'll have a first meeting, and then we'll see what we can do about the second meeting.
Did you also commit to go to Ukraine?
What about Ukraine?
Did you commit to go to Ukraine as well?
No, I haven't. I haven't committed to
Would
go
you
to
go?
Ukraine. I would think about going. Yeah, I'd think about it. No problem.
You say today, Mr. President, that if they receive your vision, what is your plan to end this war? Like today, Secretary.
Well, I'm not going to tell you my plan. I can just tell you we've made a lot of progress. This should have been done by Biden, not by me, because this has been going on for now a long time, years. And it should have been done by Biden. Just like the young gentleman that I brought home yesterday after 2 weeks. We worked on it for 2 weeks. He was a fine man, and he was in there for 3.5, almost 4 years. And they weren't able to do a thing, and I got him out. And as you know, I didn't pay $6 billion. I didn't pay anything. We did a trade, and we did a good job. We got him out in 2 weeks. It should have been out years ago. Really should have been out years ago.
What was NATO membership for Ukraine?
I don't think it's practical to have it personally. I know that a new Secretary of Defense, who's excellent, Pete, made a statement today saying that he thinks it's unlikely or impractical. I think probably that's true. I think long before President Putin, they said there's no way they'd allow that. This has been going on for many, many years. They've been saying that for a long time, that Ukraine cannot go into NATO. And I'm okay with that. I just want the war, whether they are or they're not. But it certainly would seem to be that most people have said that is something that's not going to happen.
Are you freezing out President Zelenskyy of this process a bit? Isn't there a danger of that?
No, I don't think so. As long as he's there, but at some point you're going to have elections too. You're going to have an election.
He says he wants
you
security
Ukraine as a-
assurances, Mr. President. What does that look like?
In terms of what?
If the war were to end, he says he wants guarantees of security.
We'll see what that means. I think when the war ends, one thing he was very strong about, if it ends, he wants it to end. And that's President Putin said that. He wants it to end. He doesn't want to end it and then go back to fighting 6 months later. We talked about the possibility, I mentioned it, of a ceasefire so we can stop the killing. And I think we'll probably end up at some point getting a ceasefire in the not too distant future.
I want to pause on that just for a bit. That's a big deal. That's an extremely big deal. And the news may not necessarily be giving it the gravity it deserves. What I mean by that, one of the big issues has to do with this idea of freezing the conflict. Okay, well, freezing the conflict is something that is just a no, outright. For one, Russia is winning on the battlefield. So from their point of view, if we keep going, Ukraine will collapse. That's our point of view. And so if that's their point of view, you bringing in, okay, well, what about freezing the conflict? Well, no, I don't want to freeze the conflict. And then 6 months later, all of the blood and treasure that was expended to take this territory, to defend the people in the East Ukraine. Well, we don't have to go through this process again. And you can point to Syria as being a really good example of that, where you get the Syrian conflict freezes and the people go into this fantasy that it's done. This is good. Everything else is straight. When really you had a conflict that was still bubbling under the seams, waiting to explode at the most inopportune time from the standpoint of the Syrian government. Well, if you're Putin and you're looking out for the best interests of Russia, and your point of view is, I don't want to have to keep doing this. I want to solve this. I want this to be over with. And so, no, I am not going to allow you to freeze the conflict. I'm not going to get into this process where we just keep things where they are and you build up a massive military in Ukraine that could invade again. No, we're not doing that. So the fact that Trump acknowledges that that is an issue, and that is an issue that is unacceptable for the Russian position, is a very big deal. So I'm going to let him continue, but I just want to put a nail into that. It is a massive deal that the president of the United States acknowledges and recognizes issues in Russian terms, and is able to articulate it, and not just articulate it, put it into part of the conversation of we, both of us accept that this is not something Russia will take. They will not allow a freeze in the conflict. They do not want to have to do this 6 months later. We understand that. Both of us agree on that premise. Okay, well, if you agree on that premise, then the conversation that you're having, it's not about freezing a conflict. The conversation you're having is, what does European security look like going forward? That's a big deal. That is a very big deal. Let him finish.
Do you expect
Ukraine as an
Do
equal
you
member
expect
of the peace
Ukraine-
process?
Say it, what?
Do you view Ukraine as an equal member of this peace process?
It's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace.
We will
Do you-
continue to
Sir?
provide.
I said that was not a good war to go into, and I think they have to make peace. That's what I think.
Mr. President, why did you decide to provide support to Ukraine?
Would you support Zelensky ceding territory or exchanging territory in any agreement to end the war?
Well, he's going to have to do what he has to do, but, his poll numbers aren't particularly great, to put it mildly. He's got a country where, it's been savaged and attacked. And he's got an army that's been very, very brave, actually, despite the fact that, we've given him, in my opinion, $350 billion. That's what the real number is. You don't hear that number. And Europe has given, in my opinion, $100 billion. And they've done it in the form of a loan. And I have a Secretary of Treasury right now who's actually quite brave. He's over in Ukraine on a train. And there's a lot of things happening around that train that aren't so good. And he's going there to get a document done where we're going to be assured that we're going to, in some form, get this money back, because we're putting up far more money than Europe, and Europe is in far more danger than we are. We have an ocean in between. Europe has nothing in between. They have in between? They have Ukraine in between. So wait a minute. So, as you know, Europe is putting up money, and they're getting it in the form of a loan. And the United States under Biden didn't do loans. They just handed money every time somebody walked in from Ukraine. They just handed them money foolishly. This should have never happened. It should have never started. And once it did, other things should have happened. Other things should have taken place. So we're getting security on our money. We're going to have it secured by, they have rare earth, and they have oil and gas, and they have a lot of other.
I want to pin to something else. I'm playing this, but I want to add context to some of the stuff. Two things. One, Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy, if he ran against a gutter rat, Zelenskyy would lose to that gutter rat. Zelenskyy was part of a coup government that took over after the overthrow of Yanukovych in 2014. This war should have never taken place. The issue was NATO expansion, and they didn't necessarily want to be honest about the fact that the issue was NATO expansion. This idea that Europe was under threat was nonsense. Russia had no inkling at all to get involved in this conflict, did everything in their power to avoid this conflict, whether it was the Minsk agreements, whether it was the Istanbul agreements. Putin was out there screaming like a pastor at church, begging people to come to Jesus. None of them would do it. Not just none of them would do it, they acted as if any notion of Russian security guarantees were off the table. That's the way they behaved, which is the thing that ended us in this war. It is a silly, stupid war where people are dying for no good reason. Zelenskyy would lose any election that he has. Zelenskyy knows that he would lose any election that he has. So Zelenskyy has decided no elections and has come up with this argument of, well, we can't have elections because that helps Russia. Okay, yeah, it may help Russia to have elections, but that's irrelevant. You could lose, just like anybody could lose. It's called a democracy. So this idea that Ukraine is a democracy is nonsense. He has made this excuse and is using this excuse to avoid elections and simultaneously threatening the person who is most likely to win that election if it runs against Zelenskyy with prison time over Nord Stream if Zelenskyy runs against Zelenskyy. Meaning, if Zelenskyy comes back from the UK, from his exile, and say, I'm running in the presidential election and we should be having presidential elections, he may be prosecuted for doing so. So let's be very clear. Zelenskyy has made the choice of he wants to be in the middle of any particular negotiations, and any idea of having somebody else come into play is off the table because he doesn't want to have an election. That's the first point. Second point has to do with this idea of the expansion of NATO being the cause of the conflict. Trump continuously says this should have never taken place. This should have never taken place. And Trump is completely right in pointing out that it should have never taken place. So at the very least, he gets the main theme of events, a theme that was buried dishonestly by the US and, for that matter, by Europe. If any time they talked about the war, Putin, under their model of events, Putin had 150,000 troops that, even though it was not enough to take over all of Ukraine, that troop count was somehow a threat to all of Europe, and that he was going to go barreling through Europe for shits and giggles. This was always nonsense. But this was the argument that they continuously made over and over again. Unprovoked war of aggression. The propaganda was built into the way they framed it and the way they talked about it. Trump is now articulating something very different. NATO expansion was always a red line. Even before Putin, NATO expansion was always a red line. He just said it in this thing. It was always something that they were going to be against. Not just always something they were going to be against. It is the theme of the war. Trump is getting this on several levels. Now, whether he fully understands the chapter and verse, who knows? Who cares? He's making moves to end it. Hundreds of thousands of people are dying. And Trump, President Trump, is making moves to end it. That is a good thing. That is a good thing. Whatever you think of him, ending something that should have never started with hundreds of thousands of people losing their lives is a good thing by any stretch of the imagination, by any value set that values humanity. It is a good thing. It is a good thing. And again, my point of view on this is shaped by working on a radio station, watching this take place, watching it start, and watching it evolve. We cover this constantly because it was our job to cover it. So to see Trump making moves like this in a war where I've watched video after video after video of brave men getting shot in the face and losing their lives, this is a positive development. And it's one that would have never taken place under Joe Biden. It is one that would have never taken place under Kamala Harris. It is one that would have never taken place under any Democrat. As I told you, I don't have a dog in the hunt. I pick and choose because what is my value set? And how does that value set line up against reality? In my value set, war should be avoided. Human beings losing their lives should have a reason for them to lose their lives. This is pointless. This is pointless. So yes, if President Trump is going to move to end the war, that is a good thing. That is a very good thing. And by the way, I don't even hate this mineral thing, to be bluntly honest with you. The idea that we spend 350, or I think he said $370 billion is astonishing amount of money. And then you think to yourself, okay, well, what are we getting for this? What are we spending this money for? What could we be spending this money on? If you go out to DC, you will see people laying on the streets left and right. And compare that to spending $350 billion for war that we just lost. It's outrageous. It's completely outrageous. And every Democrat would defend this shit. All of them would be like, well, we have to fight for as long as it takes. We got to be with Ukraine for as long as it takes. These goddamn fucking robots that act like they're in a goddamn cult can't see it for what it is. All of these people are being killed for no reason because NATO has decided that it wants to expand to the border of Russia. And Russia, just like the United States or any country that cares about their security, said no. They said no. And we're willing to shoot people in the face to make it clear it's a no. If that is the only language you understand. Good. He's a nigga.
The things, and we're asking for security on our money.
So does it mean
How
you
long
are
does
not
Zelensky
sending
have?
any
They've
more
agreed
aid
to it.
Ukraine?
Ukraine has agreed to it.
Does it mean you are not sending any more aid to Ukraine?
No, we are, but we want it secured, and the money is going to be secured.
When would the U.S. stop sending funding? When would the U.S. stop sending funding?
Because if we didn't do that, then Putin would say he won. We're the thing that's holding it back. And frankly, we'll go as long as we have to go because we're not going to let the other happen. But President Putin wants to have peace now, and that's good. And he didn't want to have peace with Biden.
Was that conversation with
That is fascinating. She asked them, well, why are you continuing to send Ukraine money? Like, if you feel this way, why are you keep sending the money? If we stop sending money, they collapse. We have no bargaining chips. So from his point of view, and he's right, by the way, if we no longer send Ukraine money, they couldn't pay their soldiers, they couldn't get their armaments, they couldn't keep the fight going, even though they're losing the fight. And even though in a war of attrition, they are being destroyed. Battle line after battle line after battle line. However, if we stop, the pressure that Ukraine can exert to keep themselves going ends. And my ability to negotiate also goes away with it. So we must continue to send weapons. He's probably right. It's gruesome, but he's probably right. Let's keep going.
And you tell me why that is, okay?
Was that conversation with Putin to start these negotiations part of the deal to bring Fogel home?
No, but it was a nice thing that he allowed Mark Fogel to leave. In fact, Mark wasn't feeling well, but he was all of a sudden about 2 weeks ago, he started being treated very nicely. He said they took him out for haircuts. They took him out. They helped him out a little bit and made him feel better, made him look better. And they were nice to him. And he said, I saw something happening. And it coincided with when I came into office. So that.
All right, Trump is getting into the man that was released. Apparently, a guy that was being held in a Russian jail was was released. Trump's taking credit for it. Fair enough. I don't really care that he's taking credit for it. Good for him. The part that I care about is the war. I care about that war ending. Trump said he was going to end it. It seems like he's making moves to do so. And apparently negotiations are going to start relatively soon. Trump is even putting out this idea of a ceasefire to stop the killing while they negotiate. Now, whether Russia's going to accept that, I don't know. I don't know. The reason why I say I don't know is because they're winning on the battlefield. And so it's clear that Ukraine is getting weaker as the war continues. They're having a manpower shortage. Russia's not. They're having a weapon shortage. Russia is not. So will Russia take Trump on a ceasefire as they negotiate? Maybe not. But that is secondary to the point that they are negotiating to end it and to come up with some kind of architecture for European security. This is a good thing. Whatever his faults, this is a good thing. People shouldn't be dying en masse for no good reason. And if you are a president that is making a move to resolve that, I find that to be a positive development. I'm in a strange spot because, in full transparency, I ask myself, I am not a fan of Trump to any degree, right? But at the same token, I do like the fact that he wanted to end this war, something that Biden and Harris did not. And so you're stuck with this thing of, okay, well, this person is an ogre, but this ogre, it's kind of like a broken clock, is right twice a day. On this one, he's right. And so even though it's putting up world events and caring about other people being in a bad situation while simultaneously accepting the fact that you're also in a bad situation with the person who you got. But again, from my point of view, both were bad. From my point of view, Harris was going to continue this war. From my point of view, Harris might have even started a world war. So was Trump the better option? I don't know. Is he the better option in the sense of stopping needless bloodshed? That answer seems to be yes, considering the alternative. It's interesting. All right. I am not going to keep this. I'm going to end it here. I'm going to say like this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel if you dig this content. You guys have a good day. Signing off.